married name, so when I was in high school it was different. But thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here and do something different. It's cool that you're all interested in exploring like what's out there and what the options are. So I am in tech. I've been in tech for the majority of my career here in Chicago. And I guess I put in a little bit of background on me, and so I'll go through my background, and then you're welcome to ask me any questions that you want, or we can dive into different elements of my career or, life, whatever you want to hear about. And cool, so I'm a lifelong Chicagoan, been here forever. I would also consider myself an activist outside of my tech career. So some of the most recent, I was chief of staff at Chime for the CTO throughout the IPO and AI adoption. But we'll go into a little bit more background about kind of each of my career hops. I'll give you my career journey and then a little bit on my activism, and we can go from there. But overall, huge science enthusiast and mom. So you can keep going. So I said I was from Chicago. I'm from Plainfield. I don't know if anybody knows where Plainfield is. It's like an hour from here, pretty far, just north of 80, which is what the boundary is for Chicago. But when I was growing up, we were known for having the big tornado. And so it swiped across our town, took out my high school, day before school was supposed to start. And thankfully it hit the day before, not the day after. This was pre-warnings in the 90s, in 1990, so I went to the rebuilt version. I'm younger than being in high school in 1990, but that's what we were known for, so I share that with all.
Actually.
I bet. See, all of our generation remembers it, and it inspired the movie Twister, if you ever want to look up. It was an F5, it was the first one they had in August in town, so it was a big deal. Now we see a lot stronger storms. We used to never see them hitting the city, so it was always kind of like a further out thing to worry about, but that's where I'm from, and you can go to the next one. I went to University of Illinois, so hyper-local person, and I studied marketing and finance, so I have a dual bachelor of marketing and a bachelor in finance, and from there I interned, you can switch it, at Kmart and Sears, also brands I'm sure you're semi-familiar with. But right after they merged, I was like, oh, I'm going to do all this buying stuff, right? Finishing in marketing, and I was coming out of college thinking I would love to do fashion. And I had taken a computer science class in my business school, and they were like, actually, you're going to do database migrations and work in the Kmart and Sears inventory management systems. And I was like, I guess I am. So that's what I did for my internship, and you can keep going. And then my first job was at Huron Consulting Group, which is, this building is actually visible in Chicago. It's right off of 9094. So as you're all driving into the city from the south side, you'll maybe have a different memory with that building now. And I, again, was like, yeah, let's work in healthcare. And they were like, oh no, you know tech, you're gonna work in computer forensics. So I took apart people's computers and looked for intellectual property theft and how people were stealing files from their workplace and taking them with them to their next workplace, pre-iPhone. So this was before, this was BlackBerry, and then iPhone came out and I was doing computer forensics. And I went to this really cool forensics conference, and it was the first time that they had tagged GPS to your images. And so forensics took a big leap forward then when all the cases at these conferences were all the drug dealers taking pictures of their stashes, and then the cops finding their stashes because their photos have the GPS coordinates tagged to them. So yeah, if you ever want to know anything about forensics, it was a very interesting place to be, but it was also consulting, and so I was traveling 100% of the time, which was really cool. But it was really hard to have relationships and friends and lifestyles, so I was like, I think I should do something else. And electronic computer forensics was sort of in legal consulting. It was like the electronic discovery process when you go into a lawsuit and they look at your computer and how you've been, look through your search history and see what you've been doing. So I kind of parlayed that into a project management gig, and you can flip. And I went to Groupon. So this was a big transition for me from like corporate to tech, startup. This was before Groupon went public, so this was like heyday Groupon. Again, you are all probably very young. But it was a lot of fun, and I mean, it was just a totally different atmosphere, and so I started doing computer or program management, really like shipping new software and looking at how our software is compliant and how the process of bringing new software to market is compliant with public company rules and regulations. So they kind of saw me as this like legal person, and I could help them follow the rules of becoming a big boy company as we took the journey to IPO, which is how you become a public company traded in public markets, and really like what most entrepreneurs and startups, like a big way of exiting. It's kind of like you make it as a company when you go public or you get bought. So Groupon did that, and it was the most fun day at work I've ever had. But it was also a great opportunity. I stayed in program management, led that team, and then took a product job with one of the acquisitions, Snap by Groupon. I don't know if you've ever, definitely never heard of this app, but it was like take a picture of your receipt and get money off your groceries. And so that was really cool. And I was there for a long time, ended up flipping, you can flip me, to a couple small startups that were Chicago companies. Avant was fintech, and I did product there. Now, moving from a consumer product where like everyone had our app on the phone, we were ranked #1 in the Apple Store, to a more behind the scenes product. Avant was financial tech, so they were lending. And my product itself was the API, so the actual sort of like endpoint, if you will, in software that is out there that the public engages with in order to interact with your service. And so it's like super deep tech versus very consumer, here's your app, let's test it, build new features. So that was an interesting move, and markets went crazy at that time. It was the lending tree scandal where they started, all these fintech companies started disobeying the rules of how they were supposed to lend, and so their ad or that is all powered by massive identity machines that are tracking you and paying attention to everything you're doing, and that was what we did. And they were acquired by TransUnion. I led a program management team for the engineering group. We were the engine behind Yahoo Japan, just like a very niche, random thing that we were. But the ability to do all of that matching and kind of like tracking behind the scenes was very cool and valuable and enlightening, right? Like I think you all know how you're being, it's way different for your generation in that like now you almost expect it because you've grown up with it, but yeah, that was interesting. Again, led a program management team for engineering, so shipping new software, building new features, doing big migrations of the databases and infrastructure behind that was like powering these services. Switch. So then moved over to DigitalOcean, and this was, a cloud. And so all your data is stored in the cloud, I'm sure, iCloud or Google Cloud, where you put all your photos, where you put all your stuff. We were a cloud, so Amazon was in us, all of, everybody had a presence. We were just behind the hyperscalers, so behind Google, Amazon, Microsoft. DigitalOcean was like 4 or 5 of biggest clouds. We were really like targeting the smaller businesses, people who wanted a really simple use case of how to spin up infrastructure without building their own data center, so spinning it up in the cloud. But also without all of the complexity that comes with the hyperscalers of like if you spin up a service in Amazon Web Services, there's just so many options, it can be really overwhelming. So we took a really simple approach, and this company, I did 4 0-to-1 products for them, so launched some of the database engines, ILL, the marketplace and paid marketplace where we got cut of the vendor's products. MongoDB, which is a type of database for any computer science nerds, and again led the program management team, so always within engineering.
Ended up as my first chief of staff role for the chief product officer there, working in his team, and really got to know how to report out on the business side of product development, of like, how is our marketplace performing? Are we selling? Are we not selling? Are we hitting our goals? And the different products that we offered. Also was there for 5.5 years, and like 3 years in we went public. So that was a really exciting journey as well. And if you want to hit it, then I went to Chime, which was really cool, and again, a big Chicago presence. DigitalOcean was my first remote, fully remote, 2018 pre-pandemic remote. And then Chime is again fintech. Big Chicago presence, but also IPO'd in June, so we're like kind of everywhere right now in marketing, very similar to like how Groupon was a B2C, like very much targeting individual customers. Chime is very much targeting individual customers. We were the original no-fee banking and targeting people who want to be managing their funds online and don't, want to be paying all of the fees that big banks require. So, yeah, but also like people who don't necessarily have as much credit history in order to obtain credit, so that we can work with them to rebuild that credit profile and have access to features that they probably need more than others. So that was awesome. I had a really fun time this year. My job was chief of staff to the CTO, and this was also during the AI revolution, I guess I would say. And so my job was to roll out coding with AI across our engineering teams, and really support him and support the co-founder through the IPO process and through the, like, how all the teams were sending out these AI memos about being AI first, and really I got to work on all of that for the company. Yeah, that was a fun job. They ended up going 4 days a week in the office, and I said no. So I moved this year, most recently in September, and you can hit it, and now I'm at Equinix, which is another data center company. It's not a cloud, it's the actual buildings and real estate portion of data centers. So we're one of the biggest in the world of physical buildings, which is interesting and highly in the news right now as we expand a lot and grow a ton as the data center for AI. NVIDIA has a huge installation with us, and all the public clouds are there as well. So yeah, here I run the program management team again, working for the more digital products that they have. So I'm not working on the real estate, on the physical infrastructure side of like racking and stacking servers. It's on the interconnection of them and like products like the internet. We are the company that actually has all of the internet cables that run under the ocean across the continents in order to provide the fabric of the internet. Fabric is one of our largest products, and I get to work on the digital side of that and how everybody connects into the World Wide Web. So that's what I do at Equinix, and I have a team of program managers. It's a bigger company. It's my first non-startup, but it's a pretty stable place to be right now in the world. So if you want to hit it, I guess my side jobs are really my activism. I'm like very engaged in the community, so I'll tell you about that. I guess it started because I love science and I think it's cool to learn about space, and my husband bought me a subscription so that I would read less Us Weekly, which was a really just funny way to get a magazine subscription. You can hit it, but I think through learning about space, I learned a lot about the Earth, and I read Gates' book about our climate situation right now, and I think that it was very serious, but had a lot of optimistic and very pragmatic things that you can do and how you can take action. I was very motivated by it, having my last child in 2020, and the world being very different at that time. So I felt like this was an issue I was already very knowledgeable around, because a lot of space science and learning about how to live in space is learning about how we live in Earth and what the air we breathe and the things that we need to grow our food. And climate change impacts all of that. So I was at DigitalOcean at the time, and we were going IPO, and as a part of our IPO, our CEO got up and was like, we're gonna be carbon neutral in our data centers and make a sustainability plan, and I was like, and I'm gonna run that. So I wrote a one-pager and pitched it to my boss and pitched it to the executive team, and they were like, sure, you can do that for a little while. And so I got money and did a carbon footprint to really look at our business and how we measure our carbon effect on the world. And that was really interesting. Got to put forth a carbon strategy of, starting with renewable energy for our data centers, moving into more and more carbon neutrality opportunities, and that was great. Markets crashed. 21 was really a good time to go public, and 22 was a really bad first year for a public company. So yeah, did that for a while. I think like the ability to spend money on it was not as much as I would have wanted, but every little bit counts, and so we made progress. Eventually it was time to move on. I was there 5.5 years through a public exit and a lot of change, and it was just time for me to do something different. So I took my activism out of work and really kept it private. You can hit it. And so we did a home renovation project and completely electrified our own homes with a geothermal heat pump. And so if there is one thing that you take away from today, heat pumps are good and they help you take gas out of your homes, and breathing methane is bad. And natural gas is methane. So there are a lot of different ways to electrify your life and bet on the future. But ours leverages a geothermal heat pump versus an air source heat pump. Those are the two main types. And what it does is there's 3 wells on my property that go 450 feet into the ground. They're right over here, and you don't see them, but they're there. And what happens is the water always returns to this 50-degree temperature thanks to the earth and its natural convection. And so when it is winter, the water comes up and it goes through, and they take the heat out of that standard 50 degrees, they kind of run it through a condenser to superheat it, blow air over it, and blow the air through the forced air system in my home, heating it. And then the water is now cold because it came up to the coldness of our frozen tundra, and it's going back down, and it's gonna reheat and come back up, and we take that heat and we heat the house, and it goes back up. And it works the opposite in the summer. When it's hot, the water is hot at the top, goes back to the earth, and it returns to that 50 degrees, which is cooler. We super cool it through the condenser running the opposite way. This is the same type of condenser that does your air conditioner or your refrigerator, also your air conditioner. Super cool it, blow the air over it, cool down your house. So now you know what a geothermal heat pump is. I wish there was a class on that I could have taken. But it's, seeing them drill 450 feet on our property was the coolest day. We took videos of it. Our neighbors took all the pictures off their walls, and there was a water explosion. They hit water at one point, and it bubbles up, and it was just such an event. But now it's just normal, that's how we live. You can hit it. So since I had done the full electrification process, and we had moved to Oak Park 2023 from downtown, I joined Oak Park Climate Action Network and became a climate coach for them. So we have a free service where you can fill out a form and be like, I want to learn about solar, and you get matched with one of our 15 coaches. We have a 30-minute call with you. It's all free and volunteer. I did the Rewiring America Electric Coaches, also free courses where you sign up and they can teach you all about electrification and how to apply different options, because we also use the geothermal for water heating. There's a lot of different ways to do your water, to have an electric dryer, and really remove all the methane from your home, so that as we work towards some of these 2030 targets, 2050 targets, you as an individual are doing your part. So I do that. You can hit it, and then as part of being a climate activist, building codes are climate codes, believe it or not. The way that we treat our buildings and the way that we heat and cool our buildings and use appliances and cook our food is all very related to our own climate footprints, in addition to like our cars. And so building codes are climate codes. So I'm a building commissioner, which is funny, but I'm a building commissioner in Oak Park. We're one of the first municipalities with an electrification building ordinance. So new construction in our area has to be electric. And I'm on the facilities advisory committee at our district schools. So, you know, volunteer work is free. It is unpaid. You have to show up and weigh in and bring your expertise to these different situations, but like you also get a vote and you get a say as to what happens in your community. So it's just so important to find wherever you can apply your skills and then do it. Because it matters. And some people join the PTA and I don't. I join the facilities committee. So, you know, we need all people. You can hit it. But that's me, and then most recently my activism has gone into immigration because of what we've been experiencing in our city, and so, yeah, we actually had 15 moms and did a civil disobedience sit-in at Broadview. I live right in between Chicago and Broadview right now, so we were, our area was pretty escalated during that time. But that's me, my first time on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. You can hit it. And so yeah, that's like me. I think that people are really dimensional and careers are a really big and important part of your life, but there's also like so much that you give to your communities, and all of those parts matter. And they all make up one person, and different needs that you have are fulfilled in different ways, right? Like I support my family with my career, and I support doing the right thing in the world by all of my activism and volunteering. So I'm happy to answer questions about any of it. You can hit the last one. I'm a mom at first, like these are my kids and my family. It's like obligatory to put in a picture of your kids, I think. But yeah, she's in kindergarten, and so it's so funny to be in a high school. And then I have a third grader. But yeah, there were some structured questions. Do you wanna, we could do those, or? Yeah.
You made a lot of like, I don't know, like intentional or not, like a lot of shifts in your career. Like I feel like, what was your like thought process behind that, and were they to like gain more experience in like adjacent industries, or like what were you thinking? What was your thought process?
Yeah, really at first it was driven by lifestyle. Like I took a job that would provide me the lifestyle I wanted. Like I like to have flexibility with location. I really wanted to travel a lot in the beginning, and so I wanted to do consulting, and then I didn't want to travel as much after doing it for like 5 years, and so I found this like cool opportunity at a really hip company to do what I thought I could do, and it would give me a lifestyle where I would just be around a little bit more, and so I took that path. And I felt like I could still use my skills there. And then I think like, yes, I got very excited about it, but to me, like, they call it work because they don't call it fun. It's not like work doesn't have to be fun. Like Groupon was actually a lot of fun when I made that big pivot. But I think that it like provided me the lifestyle that I wanted, and I had the skills that I thought I could perform well in the position and grow. And I think and then once I kind of got into this tech space, I was also very interested to continue building my skills there because I really liked the industry. I liked the people I worked with. They're all really smart, and they're all really welcoming. Like as a woman, I'm one of 10% people ever. Like most of my meetings are 20 guys and me, and so, but they didn't act that way. Like a lot of times when you get into those circumstances, I felt like they were really inclusive and welcoming to me. And I got to really like work on these fun, cool products that I was really motivated by. And I got to keep doing new products, which is also like so exciting, bringing products to market, while using like a skill set that I thought that I'm like proven to be good at. And so yeah, so I would have never guessed I would go in this direction when I was in college or when I was anytime before that. But I think my skills led me this way. I've always been really into math. I've really always been into science. Personally, just like interest-wise and like test score-wise, my math scores were always higher. So I think that like, if you look at my skills, it was clearly pointing me in this direction. But if you add in like what I wanted to do, it was not this. It was like be a fashion and like be cool. And I ended up in startups, which like I think are fun and cool, and maybe they're more fun and cool now, but then it was not. So I would have never known. But I think that it's important to listen to what you're good at. And now, you know, I've done these product roles and I've done these like project management roles, and I'm better at the project management ones. And so that's what I take to market when I think about going to look for a new position. In tech, like, you don't really find people that are staying in their jobs for 10 years or 15 years. My husband's been in his job for 10 years, and this is his second major job in his career. And like, we're in our 40s. So,
Where does he work at?
What?
Where does he work?
He's at Hightower Finance, and he does bonds. So, like, it's just a very different, so when I think about taking my skill set to the job market, like, I look at what I am best at, and that's how I sell myself. And I've done a lot of new products. I've done a lot of software product releases. And so that does really lean towards the startup industry, especially since my experience has been in this like company stage of, you know, they're not brand new and they're about to exit. And so that's like a moment in a company's life cycle that is very different than Series A funding and like first product they've ever made. But it's more like adding many more products so that they're not just selling one thing. You diversify your revenue and you sell more than one thing so that you can be a bigger company, make more money, but also like service more of your customer base's needs with your products.
Do you see Groupon, you were like on the very early team?
Yeah, I joined 2 months before the IPO. So like I was 2011. And I think the other thing, like my jobs have been very network heavy. I went to a birthday party and met a girl who was hiring at Groupon. I mean, it was, and like very similar to Emma, like I followed up with her. And then I got an interview. And then it was like, I interviewed with her, you know, it was a crazy time at Groupon because they were growing a lot. I went on a Saturday and sat in a fishbowl, and the interviewers went in between the fishbowl candidates and just switched around, and then they told us on Friday if we got the job or not. So like, it was a time where, you know, your network will guide you in a lot of ways throughout your career, but it gets you to a place. It doesn't get you the gig. Like, it gets you to the door usually. And so it's just really important to continue always paying attention and keeping your network hot, so that, you know, whatever happens, you know, and I think it's even more dimensional in this market where startups are hot and then they're not, or especially with AI, right? You build something and then somebody else replaces it more quickly because the tooling is just leaping right now. Do you have a backup plan? Like, how easy is it for you to find something else? Because in my world, in startup world, like that's a very real thing that happens. Yeah, good questions.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask you, so you mentioned that you were the technology program manager currently at Equinix, but can you walk us through like a typical day in your life? Like, what are your responsibilities and what skills do you use?
Yeah, so at this gig, I'm a people manager. So I have like a lot of people management responsibilities that are very like rhythmic in motion. You know, at the beginning week we set our priorities, at the end of the week we check in and say how it went, and very like software agile approach. But overall, my day-to-day is focused around, you know, I don't have a specific product that I work on as a team leader and leading for an organization, a program management organization. But we have a set of goals that we lay out for the year. The goals that have the most value, have the most impact, have the most risk are the ones that I focus on with my team. That's really like why we're here, is to make sure the things that matter the most, that usually have the most technical complexity or touch the most teams, and have the most dependencies in your service backend are the ones that we focus on the most. So I make sure that my program managers have all the tools they need. I handle any escalations that they may come up of like, well, we thought it was gonna work this way, it didn't work out, or this team didn't, this team couldn't deliver on this timeline, so we're gonna switch it this way, and how does that relate to a customer experience, and then how do we need to manage that appropriately to make the customer happy, to make the teams, unblock the teams, get them the tooling or whatever it is that they need. So my day, I operate mostly in chat. We're a remote organization, but I think, it would depend on the product itself. Like today I'm working on incident management. We had a call in the morning, a lot of calls that I'm on. It's kind of how I live my life on Zoom a lot and in chats, and then like very much on deliverables of documentation or process right now because we're working on like reorchestrating how we handle outages. And so the like things that I'm accountable to personally, aside from my team, are the processes and procedures around incident management. And so reviewing those with other stakeholders, aligning on however we feel, however we think we should do it, they think they should do it. And then yeah, I think that's my normal day. A lot of talking to people and documentation. And then escalation management, especially around incidents, making sure that we're fixing whatever's broken, or we understand why someone cut an under ocean cable. It's like, I've never worked in a job where that was a real thing, but this job it is, and it has happened, and it is wild to learn how the internet works with like actual cables under the ocean. So that's kind of fun.
So the next question is, throughout your career, like what are some of the biggest challenges you faced? Like how'd you overcome them, and what do you think is the biggest lesson?
Yeah. So when I worked at Avant, FinTech, I was in product. It was really hard for me to switch from a consumer product to a super back-end product. Like there's no validation. When you launch something to a consumer, a customer directly, and you see commercials for it, it's so fulfilling and rewarding. When you ship a back-end feature and it's like super API-y and if it's broken, it's a problem, but if it wins, like nobody knows about it, there's no commercials. That was a big shift for me at Avant. Also, I think that the other part was challenges and growth. That company, in the way that, like, I think I learned a massive lesson around paying attention to how the company is doing. Like, it sounds like almost obvious to talk about it now, but you get into your own little world, and I was doing the API, but I was also doing an auto lending product that was going to be a new product. It's kind of been like my shtick over my career, is doing all these new products. Well, the company was a lending company, and it was money in, money out. You get money, you give it to people because that's how you make your money. The money stopped coming in, and teams were like starting to get smaller, but there were no massive company announcements. And mine was a new product that wasn't making any money yet. And I'm like, this doesn't look so good for me. And so I started evaluating, like, what is my network doing? What are my options here? Is there something else in the world that I could potentially, that might be a little bit safer from an economic perspective? And sure enough, I was laid off. The money drained out, and they didn't have any, and so they weren't going to do new products, and so they fired all their new product people, laid them off. And I was grateful that I had already started looking around because I had a job offer 2 days later, my next gig, and I saw what was happening, but like I was not the people who hadn't paid attention. And I think I had never been, like, that was my, in tech, companies come and go. That was a tech unicorn, and you get to be a unicorn, and I've had a lot of unicorns work out and transition to IPOs, but that is not most people's journey. Most unicorns flop out, or they never become a unicorn. And so even though you get all the notoriety and the names and the PR and like you guys don't follow these circles, but like we had all of that. It was sexy to work at Avant, and then it wasn't, and then they laid off a bunch of people. So, you know, I think that you always have to like pay attention around you and prepare yourself. And like, I'm supporting a family right now, so I need to be more prepared if I have a disruption in my income and in our family's insurance, because my tiny humans gotta go to the doctor and they want their teeth and straight and stuff. So, you know, you have to evaluate your own risk profile and look at what you're signing up for and make sure that they are more aligned, right? And so I think that was a huge learning experience for me, and that was the first time I'd learned it. Most people who've had careers as long as mine in tech have experienced a layoff of some sort. They're like all over the news right now, Facebook releasing people and stuff like that. So you have to pay attention to your own needs and like your rent and how you're saving money in order to provide yourself a runway if you need to make a move like that. And it's just very real. And I think that, you know, now I'm more prepared for it, but I would just say that's something I learned. It doesn't ever feel good. It's like easy to talk about now because it's past, but it still doesn't feel good. But when you are prepared, at least you're not going to go hungry.
I think you described a lot of your kind of path and education career path. But one other thing I wanted to ask was, what are some skills that you didn't think would be that helpful, but ended up being very critical to your career?
I had no idea that the computer science classes I took in business school would be as useful as they were. I do not have an engineering degree, and I've worked in engineering teams since 2011. And really all my jobs have been hyper-technical. But I have a business degree, and so thankfully it included some of these like tech classes. And they have been really important. Like learning to query, learning query languages, and I think even more so for you all, as tech is just such a more integral part of everyday jobs. Really staying curious and using the tools at your disposal, and then being okay with that being, you know, changing dramatically, right? Like, we didn't used to always have email. Now we have email. Now we have Excel to do all of our math. Now we have AI that is like a whole nother leap. And so my feeling around that is like, you have to learn it or you get left behind. Yeah.
I'm really big into tech, and I just wanted to piggyback off of something you said and ask a question. Do you think experience outweighs having certifications or degrees, like as personal experience or what you've seen from other people?
1,000% yes. Yeah. At Groupon, we were one of the first places to set up dev boot camps. Have you ever heard of a dev boot camp? They teach you to code without going to college. And I have countless engineers at this point that I know that went to dev boot camps that like, the only other woman on the leadership team at Chime was a dev boot camp graduate. She was a teacher before she decided to change her career path, and she's one of the most senior women at Chime. So yes, like your experience and how you show value to your job, I think completely outweighs degrees. Now, there's a boundary, right? Like if you can't code, then you need to learn to code somehow. But yeah, there's a lot of self-study, and especially with like the availability of learning online and like YouTube learning and all the different like free ways you can learn. Yeah, you can definitely show your value and show your ability to compete with people who are like PhD in coding. I think that like being, one of your questions is, yeah, like other skills and kind of like what matters. Being assertive to learn it and to learn and to say and to capture that, but then to take it on as a whole on like, I'm launching a marketplace, making sure that all of the, you know, end to end of your code works, right? Like I release this app into the marketplace. Does it work? You should care. You should definitely care. And so being able to not just like do the technical work, but like look at the whole picture from a business perspective will also go far go farther than like having an MBA, right? I have no MBA. I don't even have a PMP, which is like the program management something, professional. It's like a very common program management certificate. I did the Agile training and doing the like Scrum Master certifications and stuff, which is like way easier, I would say, and less expensive than the PMP, but like I've run 3 program management teams now, or 4, and I've had chief titles. Like, it's all about what you know and how you apply it, more so than like the dots next to your name.
You mentioned like how you could use your network a lot to get in the door and stuff, and especially for product management, I feel like a lot of people might not know they're gonna exactly do that when they're young. Like, how do you think people can get into like a field that way, not exactly just product management, but a field where it might be hard like to enter, or like something where you might come from an adjacent industry? Like, how can you like start on that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think just learning about it, right? Like doing the 2-hour classes and learning about it online and then trying it out on your own. I always think about developers and product managers and as like, they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs. Whenever I'm meeting a developer, if they don't have a side project, I am skeptical. Like, if they have not built something that is some kind of calendar app that they use, or something to apply their skills in order to get them to stay curious and learn, you know, that's where I'm like, I'm not sure. So I think it applies to this, like, getting into other areas, where if you want to learn it, like, you can do that anytime you want in a different way, right? Like, we have a climate coaching app, right? Like, I could build a climate coaching app and learn more about into the developer field, and then get like a easy developer, like a low level developer job, right? To match what I've learned on my own and my skills. And so, yeah, I think look at the job qualifications, or like what it means to be a product manager. Generally, you kind of run a business. Generally, you specify how software is built, or hardware, if you're into hardware. And then you can always like apply those to something, however small, in order to learn more about it. And then that is a sellable act. You can sell that in market when you think about taking yourself and selling your skills towards a career. So, you know, every little bit that you learn is something that you can talk about, and then a jump off point for expanding more and getting like an associate product manager job to build that skill set and grow in that direction.
Also, working at a lot of startups, have you ever like maybe proposed to like a senior level if you want like a new project, or like something you're like curious about in how they're working? So I'm not sure how big the size was of the group one, but yeah, have you ever like done that, or known of someone who has done that?
Yeah, Groupon was like huge when I started, but engineering was only 300 people. So engineering was really small when I started, and it grew to be like 1,300 people, which was very different, right? But the sales organization was always really big. Have I proposed features? Yes. I would say I proposed like a whole program at DigitalOcean when I wanted to do the climate stuff. And I wanted that to be a part of our story and a part of our brand and a part of our image. We were doing the Pledge 1% with our IPO, which is where companies who are, generally when you're going for an exit, like you raise $700 million. And so if you pledge 1% of that to do good with, it's like that's a huge chunk of money that goes into really cool opportunities for whatever your focus is. And so, you know, it all starts like in product. A product requirements document, a PRD, is usually like the first way that you make a proposal for a new feature. And so I took that same approach with proposing a climate program for DO, and I wrote a one-pager, and I showed it to somebody, and I got feedback on it, and I was super open. All feedback is a gift. Whether or not you agree with it, you listen to it, and you think about it, and then you respond. And that is how you kind of like propose something and spread, and it could be a no, it could be a not now, it could be a yes and let's change it in this way. Or it could be, yes, do it. Here's $100,000. Go buy a tool, or go, hire some developers to make it happen. But yeah, I think that like being able to take your thoughts and put that into a practical form is a way to start. And I think it's great initiative when you do it. So like I would encourage it on my team. Did you have one?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned you had like a lot of different jobs and a lot of different companies. So which job specifically taught you the most about yourself? And what did you learn?
Most about myself. About myself. I mean, I think that Groupon was defining in a lot of ways. Because it got me into tech, and that taught me that there was this whole like job space out there that was not corporate. And you could, I think of myself as having a little Chicago flair where like if I gotta say something, I'm gonna say it, and respectfully, and then, but that's okay. That's okay in this space. And as long as you're respectful and constructive, like that's okay. And so I think that taught me a lot there. I think I found my activism at DigitalOcean. I think 2020 was very motivating around that front. Like I think I was already pretty activated, and I think, there's a lot going on with the pandemic and the social justice movements that were happening at that time, that it was like, what am I contributing here back to society? And climate was really like the area I knew most about, and I felt strongest as that I could contribute versus like other issues that were at the time. And so I think I learned the most about myself there. I started having my kids at Signal and DigitalOcean, so I think that's always like pivotal, but I don't think it defined me as my career. It didn't change my career. I also really liked going remote with DigitalOcean. I was already like part-time remote with all of my jobs, because consulting, you're traveling, you're basically part remote. But being full-time remote is a preference for me, is a way that I work best. A little bit of travel, but mostly full-time remote. I think it's the lifestyle that fits me. It does not work for every job, it does not work for every human. But it worked for me. And engineering is like a big space where it works best, because you need people 24/7 around the globe. So you can't always be in person for that. Cool, yeah?
What skills do you think it's important to build as a high schooler that wants to go into tech?
Be curious, play with AI. It's here to stay. I also think that if you want to go into tech, like starting your entrepreneurship journey and like building your first whatever, whether it's hardware or software. Like my experience is mostly in software, but actually Chicago has a really big hardware scene. M-Hub is a really cool hardware startup space. They do tons of events too. Really amazing new facility that they built, and their events are really cool. So I would say like don't be afraid to do your first thing, whatever it is. Like I do real estate on the side, that's my side hustle. It's a business. Running a business is like you learn all the entrepreneurship skills. Stay curious on the AI front, and really like think about the skills you have and how you can apply them.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. You're already here, so good job. Like this is a cool school.